Now that we have the XML handler, we need to put it somewhere. So we're going to put it on the game manager. So we only we only initialize those that data one time. So go to the game manager and drag that script over. Okay, now that we have the script on the game manager, we need to get a reference to it. So let's go to the game manager. Let's declare a new variable, XML handler. And once we have the variable, we need to retrieve it as a component of this object. So go down to start and let's retrieve it. So get component XML handler, that retrieves a reference to the XML handler. Okay, so we're ready to next get those sprites. So before we can start placing those blocks, we need the images, right? So let's make a new folder called resources, right? And this is a special folder where you can retrieve assets during runtime. So resources, I'm going to make another folder here just in case I have need for some other objects. So organize it, call it blocks, and then just drag your blocks, your sprites, into this folder. So you'll be provided for this, and you just have to go get them and drag them in. Right, there you go, right here. And now we have the blocks. So the question now comes up is, where do we actually want to store these, right? So we can store them on the level. Every time we load a level, we can get these blocks or we can get these sprites, but that's really not efficient. I mean, why do it over and over? So what we're going to do is we're going to just do it once, and we're going to place a reference to these in the game manager. So we're going to go to the game manager, and we're going to have a function called set sprites. We're also going to set the game playing to false at the beginning, right? So let's declare that variable, the variables that we need for the sprites. We're going to make it into a list. So a list of sprites. And now we just have to load it from the resource folder. So let's go to the function. And we'll declare that function, set sprites. Could put it down here. Okay. So when you retrieve it from the resource folder, they come in as objects, right? And we have to convert them all into sprites. So we have a loop that iterates through all those objects, and it casts them into a sprite and adds them to the list. So now we have the sprites, and they're going to be persistent throughout the whole game. So everything's ready to go now to start making our levels. It was a long way. We had to do the XML handler, we had to get the sprites, but we're almost there. So make a new script called level, and let's see. Let's open it up and see what we're going to put in there. So the first thing is we need some variables, right? So let's make a region for the variables. And we're going to do the singleton like we did. Again, we use the singleton model so we can retrieve a reference to this object from any part of the game. We also don't want this to be persistent. So as you remember, the game manager, we said don't destroy on load, right? So as we go from scene to scene, we do want to destroy this because we want to reform it every time. Okay, so there it is. We may have to actually call the function, and we're ready to get some data. So for this level. So when the level is formed in the game scene, we are going to get, the first thing we need to do is go to the game manager and say, okay, what button did I press, right? The game manager stores that number, what level to play. So we need a variable called level, level num, I should say. We also going to need to know some data, like how many sides we have, and also we need to make the blocks, and we're going to put them in a matrix. We don't have that block class yet, but we'll make it in a moment, right? Okay, so where do we get the data? Well, we get it from the XML handler, right? And the XML handler is on the game manager. So we have XML manager, instance, XML handler, and then we have a function called get level data. So we're going to have to make that function in the XML level, and that will retrieve from the level all the data specified by that number. So here it is, the new function. We have a new region called gameplay, if you like, and you pass in the level num, and we'll go to the levels array and get the correct level out of that array. And since we started with 0 and 1 and 2 will be synced with the array. If we started levels with 1, 2, and 3, then we would have to subtract 1. But anyway, we're okay here. As you see, once we have that level, XML level from the XML manager, we have access to all the data in there. And one of them, if you remember, was sides, right? So we can retrieve the side. Okay, so we need the block class, right? We need a block class before we can test anything out here. And if we try to run it right now, it won't run. We'll have an error. So let's make a block class. And as you see, it is saying it cannot find that block. So make a new class called block. That error did go away. So what are we going to put in here right now? Let's leave it just blank for now, but at least we have no errors, right? So now that we have no errors, we can go to the game scene. We can make a new empty, let's call it level, and drag that level script over. If you had errors though, you wouldn't be able to do that. So at least we're able to drag that script over. Let's test this out, right? So the first thing we notice, or I notice I have, is a path problem. I didn't put in the right path. I should have put in assets in the path to the level XML. It goes through a folder called assets. So let's fix that. It should be assets/scripts/level data XML. Okay. Once we try that again, save everything and try it again, I do see another problem arising here, and that has to do with the groups. So I have an index out of range problem here, and after taking a look at this for a while, I realized I had some problem with the index. And this is the thing. You see the index here? I had it at the top of this loop above. So it was initialized only once. But it has to be initialized for every new group. So the index has to be initialized. And I think I also had the index plus plus inside this I loop, but it should be outside. So take those out and fix those. And I think this was the only errors that I was getting. So let's now save everything, and I want to debug this. So I'm going to put a stop right there in level, and I'm going to attach it. Go to start the debugger, or attach Unity debugger, I should say. And now when you play the game, it'll stop here, and we can take a look at some things. So play the game. The XML handle will do its thing, and it looks like that has no errors, right? Because it's already running. And now when I click, we can go to that stop and take a look at what we retrieved. So if you look at what we retrieved the first level, and we have all the groups from that level, right? Remember, we made the groups. And inside each group, it's a bunch of positions, right, for each block. So that looks good. And also the matches. We have the matches, and if you open that up, every match has a position, a type, and a value. So it looks like this is all okay.